Hi, this is Ananda Leeke, and you're listening to the Thriving Mindfully podcast. And today, you are tuning into a special segment. It's the Thriving Mindfully Movement series. This series was created to give you an opportunity to listen to conversations that I get to have with these amazing spirit people. And I say spirit people because they are walking in the spirit of who they truly are. They're coming from their hearts and they're living and being, most importantly, their real selves in their lives, relationships, careers, businesses, and organizations. These are folks that I really believe you can learn from. So tune in, listen, and may you get what you need to get from the conversations that I am blessed to have with these folks. Get ready. It's gonna change your life for sure in some small, medium, or big way. Welcome, everybody, to another episode in this new series that I've launched, the Thriving Mindfully Movement series. Yes, y'all, it's become a movement. And today I'm blessed to be able to speak to a dear sister love, a soul sister love that I've known since 2017. And Tia is an amazing spirit. And one of the things that I admire and enjoy watching in Tia is her heart-centered practice to being who she is, even when she struggles. It's always coming from the heart. So today I want to introduce you to Tia Oso. Did I say it, the last name right?
Yes, you did. If you wanted to say it in Yoruba, you can say Osho.
Osho. Let's say it in Yoruba.
Okay.
Tia Osho. Tia is currently sharing her gifts as the executive director of an amazing organization called Build Power, and that's BLDPWR. I love how you all spell it. Tia, tell everybody who you are. And that's a loaded question because that could be 50 years. And the things that are really most important to you in this moment. Just a few things, just so people get a feel for you. And then we're gonna open this up and we're gonna go for it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me, Ananda, and for being patient with me. I always appreciate the time to work with you and collaborate with you and talk with you and just share any type of time and space with you. Since our being bunkmates in 2017 at that camp, I don't remember what exactly it was, but you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, my name is Tia Osho, actually Anshantia. Corrine Osho. My middle name is named after my maternal grandmother. And when I say my whole name, I like to make sure to include that. And I am a culture strategist and a leader in narrative change. Really the heart and the root of my work is around racial justice and advancing racial justice. But advancing racial justice through love is my mission and how I define it for myself. I'm based in Mesa, Arizona, and I am currently working remotely for Build Power. Build Power's work is based in Los Angeles, and we're also developing some work in Houston, Texas, and really talking about the ways that we both understand systemic oppression and what's necessary for us to both tear down those systems and build new ones. And so we call our mission with Build Power to reimagine and realize the liberated future that we all deserve. And I've been on this journey, I would say, around liberation and movement building and organizing really my whole life. I was really kind of born with a fire inside of me to, see things made right. And so when I was a little kid, that looked like being a tattletale and, calling people out when they did something that I felt like they were doing wrong. And then, running for student government and volunteering and being really active as a youth organizer and coordinator. And then now my career in social justice work and organizing and advocacy work all led me to both becoming a co-founder with Build Power and then now the executive director And we work at the at that intersection of popular culture and racial justice, because we believe that our artists and culture workers and storytellers are the folks who help us to make meaning of the world, both through their art and then also through the ways that people admire them and the platforms and influence that they have. And so we work really closely with artists and creatives and people with influence and entertainers and athletes in order to become more politically educated. A lot of them have a heart for their communities and they want to be responsible with their platforms, but they don't always have, of course, like the time to focus on learning how to do those things. And so we help them build relationships with grassroots organizations and leaders. We help them leverage their platforms to raise awareness and have people connect with those grassroots organizations and leaders that are doing the work of racial justice, advancing gender justice, working on, organizing communities around climate justice, all of those things. We help people to build those relationships so that we can have a stronger movement, so that those movements for justice can reach broader audiences and that people can work, be unified, right, in the work of change and transformation in our communities. And then we also have expanded our work in the storytelling realm because we want to also be able to touch, move, and inspire audiences also, so that when you hear about a march or a rally or why we need to invest more resources in parks instead of police, that your heart and mind is already pumped and primed in order to believe that, people deserve beautiful green spaces more than they deserve punishment. So we've launched Build Power Productions last year to help and expand our storytelling in that arena into long form content as well.
Wow. You've come a mighty long way from when we met in 2017. It's hard to believe it's been about almost 7 years. And I want to give a shout out to our dear soul sister love, Lauren Brown, who was responsible for bringing together some amazing folks that worked in the digital, social justice, anything to do with human rights kinds of work, environmental justice, all of that together in a sacred place in British Columbia. And it was I just came because Lauren said come,
Right, me too.
I always, when I'm invited to these kinds of experiences, I don't have any expectations. And I just know and trust that the people that I'm supposed to connect with, the people that I'm supposed to talk to, stay connected to, share, collaborate, it will reveal itself as time goes on. And when I met you, you were in the midst of some interesting growth opportunities.
Yes.
And there's a quote that I wanted to share, and it's by Dr. Maya Angelou. And this month, if you're listening, it's April. And on April 4th, we celebrated the 95th birthday of our ancestor, Dr. Maya Angelou. And this quote makes me think of you, and which is one reason why I wanted to have you on the Thriving Mindfully Movement series. It's also one of the reasons why I do what I do. Dr. Angelou wrote, "My mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style." So when I met you, it was very clear that you were struggling with surviving.
Yes.
And we've heard what you're doing with Build Power, but I want to roll it back some and, and lift the veil, if you will, on who you were in that moment, in that time, and what you were going through. Because the whole point of this series is to show folk a glimpse of what everyday real people, you'll see Tia and you'll see her fabulousness. And yeah, there are other things that got her to this point in her life. She was always fabulous. She's always going to be fabulous. But she has days
Right,
where,
right.
it took a minute to get aligned. And so
Yeah, yeah.
let's talk about it's Stress Awareness Month. And when I met you, you was coming out
I
of
was stressed out. I was stressed
yeah.
out. I was in the middle of a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's such a good question. I would say when we met at that retreat, Web of Change, that's what it's called, where Lauren invited us,
Mhm.
an activist in the digital space. So I was in the midst of transitioning from doing community organizing work. I was the national organizer for an organization called Black Alliance for Just Immigration. And this is before 2020, right? We had been organizing, and I had been organizing in the national context around racial justice for 5 years at that point. So from 2012 to 2017, in like direct actions, political education, teachings, rallies, helping people with their immigration cases, just all of those things. And I was really at a point where um, I had burned out and ended up losing my position with Baji during that summer. And something about that moment, and there's been a couple of times in my career, now I understand it as like taking a career break, but there's been several times in my career where either I've chosen not to work somewhere or I've been let go. And I have just this in my spirit, this thing of like, you're not supposed to be working right now. You knew that this moment was coming, something was coming, and you need to take a moment to sit back and really pivot what it is that you're doing or how it is that you're being, or understand what's not working for you. And so by that time, I knew, okay, like this is an opportunity for me to take a step back and learn more about myself and who I am in this moment and what I need. And being more, I had also started some coaching with a woman named Debrina Jackson Gandy. And I listened to a podcast that she was on talking about personal transformation for Black women. And that podcast and the framework that she talked about around self-care as a lifestyle and not self-care as something you just do when you got burned out, it was really a moment where I was really beginning to shift my mind and understand that, and just like very, very, very first learning, like for myself, that I don't have to wait until I burn out in order to give myself some time away and take a break. And I shouldn't be waiting until I burn out. And why do I feel like I have to work myself down until there's nothing left in order to be worthy? Why is this a practice in movement spaces where we work so hard that we get sick? And specifically in the potential, like a specific, especially that summer, this is 3 years after Michael Brown was murdered in St. Louis, Missouri. Like there was just like a fervor and a frenzy in movement spaces where we're fighting and working like we're going to start the revolution, but revolutions don't start because of people's hard work. Like that's not why. Like revolutions happen when an idea's time has come and there's so much critical movement building happening that systems change. But we were working like the revolution was going to happen off of our backs. And I know that I was working like that. And I was also trying to learn how to make more money, because obviously being a community organizer is not a lucrative career. And I was having like some really deep work that I was doing around like my worth and my value and being able to start my own business. And then right in that moment of agreeing to come up to the retreat, I had a client that was really demanding. And, the work I was doing for them was really important. And at the same time, I knew that I didn't need to be prioritizing work over the things that I wanted to do for myself, because that is the same practice that got me burned out in the first place. But I was dealing with a lot of like guilt behind that and a lot of self-doubt about my capabilities and my abilities. And, talking with you really helped me to work through that, helped me to stop and take a breath, and all different types of practices that we use in movement spaces that at the time felt like an afterthought, but like being more mindful, being more tuned in with our bodies, being more heart-centered. I was just at the beginning stages of that journey for myself, and it took really I would say the whole 2 years really from that moment to the moment when I felt really more confident in myself as an organizer and as a strategist and as somebody worthy of making enough money, more than enough money to pay my bills, but somebody where I could put some money away, all of those different things. And what's most important to me now is embodying that and embodying that even in my practice as, becoming an executive director. I cannot make this job the center of my life. And I need to be expanding not just my capacity to be effective, which is something that is still important, but is not the center of my my focus right now. I'm expanding my capacity to live a more full and well-rounded and holistic life, and socialize with my friends and be there with my family and, go on vacation. Now I, take breaks throughout the year, and I'm going on a trip in 2 weeks, even though we have a really busy time and a really busy schedule and having a lot of money to raise. I'm taking a week off. That's happening for myself. And yeah, I think it's really important for, especially like Black women who are always putting on we put the whole community on our back, the whole culture, our whole families, to understand that we can be up to what we're up to and our purpose without sacrificing ourselves. But so many people and so many of us are used to be working in a self-sacrificing type of way as though we have to, but really we're choosing to be that way, and we can choose to be different.
Brava. I have to say it was very brave of you to even strike up a conversation with me. Not that I was afraid or anything, or I'm scary, but it was very brave of you to just open up and share. Not once, but we had some really great conversations by the water.
We did.
I never forget that. And recognizing that here is a sister, I could see you, this is just a pit stop. You are, what I really admire about you is that you have surrendered to these sabbaticals. That's what I call them.
Yeah.
Full sabbaticals. You surrendered to it. You were like, this is what's happening. Everything's not fabulous. You were like,
yeah, everything is not great.
I don't even know where some money's coming from. But I'm trusting and I'm learning to trust. That was something that I saw you doing. And without a doubt, in my mind, I knew, this person, this spirit woman is she's clearly prepared to walk her path. You're going to learn, just like all of us do, but you're going to grow and you're going to flourish. And so fast forward to February of 2020, Tia was the last person that I had like a fancy dinner with.
Yep.
And you were in town in DC, and it was just so groovy. That's one of my favorite words. It was so groovy to connect and just soak up your golden glow, all of you, and the lessons learned and things that had transpired in the 2.5, almost 3 years since we connected. And at that point in February of 2020, you were thriving in a career. You were getting support in the personal development and spiritual development areas. And I want to talk a little bit about your spirituality, as much as you feel comfortable talking about your spirituality and how that plays a role in keeping you grounded.
That's such a great question. Yeah, I was raised Baptist Christian, and I was at an open mic a couple weeks ago, and I ran into one of the performers, just was telling her what an amazing, just fantastic voice that she had. Her name's Terry Tobin. And as we started talking, we realized that we were raised in the same neighborhood and went to the same church. And we were talking about, there's another friend of mine here in Arizona. Her name is Ebony Johnson, and she calls herself a Reformed church girl. And I know a lot of people can relate to like what that means. And so me and Terry were talking about being in like the basement of this Baptist church as little kids during Sunday school. And, you know, one of the elders who was teaching the class telling us, you know, if you don't get baptized, you go into hell. And, you know, you're 7 years old, you take it, all of it to heart. And we were able to laugh about kind of our journeys of like learning for ourselves, right? How to have a relationship with God. And I do still consider myself a Christian, and I'm still a believer. But my spiritual practice is not bound to other people's interpretations of the Bible, regardless of their title. Even if it is a pastor, I don't take their word as the gospel. I take the gospel as the gospel. And I learned how to, you know, read the Bible for myself and pray for myself and connect with Holy Spirit for myself. And that has been also having to unlearn religious doctrine. And for me, I can't speak for anybody else. For me, a lot of that journey has been both like studying not just the Bible, but studying the history of the Bible, studying the translations of the Bible, and the political processes that inform those interpretations and translations, and understanding that that a lot of religious doctrine is about social control. And again, as somebody who's committed to liberation, I cannot accept that, and I couldn't accept that for myself as a Black woman, that somebody's design of a religious doctrine to control the masses, and especially control women and women's power. There was just so much that is unaligned, and I had to figure out for myself, like, okay, well, what does alignment look like? Part of my spiritual journey has also really been informed by traveling to Israel. And I got a chance to go to, one of my Nigerian aunts invited me for her birthday, and we went and visited like all of the old temples and all of these places, right, in the Bible, and like seeing them in real life. And also seeing that, you know, Mary, there was a church of Mary, and she was worshiped just like Jesus was worshiped. Why don't we know that? Why don't we learn that? Are learning things like a lot of translations of the word for God, the word for Holy Spirit, the word for wisdom and divinity were actually gendered female words. And then when the Bible got translated and codified, those are all now gendered as male words. Those things don't add up and don't make sense with regard to like what, you know, God's intention is for us and what we're supposed to understand as divine feminine and like the power of the feminine. But when it comes to like a religion and a religious motivation to control women, right, and exploit women, that's when it starts to make sense. And so I've had to unlearn those things, and I do still pray. I do still, you know, get teaching, but I also know how to listen and discern the word of God for myself and Holy Spirit for myself, and to also listen and discern when somebody is teaching from, you know, doctrine and not from the truth. So I pray every day, I journal every day. I have an altar where I have my maternal grandmother, maternal great grandmother's pictures. I'm really grateful that I have a picture of my great grandmother. She's the first, you know, generation born outside of slavery on my matrilineal line. And I also take the time to understand like seasons and cycles and in moments, and even, you know, tapping in a little bit with like the moon cycle and astrology and things like that to understand what's happening on a cosmic scale, because we come from the cosmos, like the same substance that stars are made of, our bodies are made of. And discovering that and learning that for myself has really, you know, as like up in the air as it seems, it is the thing that keeps me grounded, because I have to understand that at the same way that I'm living in a time and a space, my experience is timeless, and I'm standing in the tradition of so many generations of people who came before me. And there are people who are coming after me who are expecting me to show up, in my fullness and in my power. And that's what my spiritual practice is about, understanding like what is up for me to do now in this moment, that's honoring my past and honoring my future.
Beautiful. And I'm so glad that you shared all of that, because I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. When we got together, Tia was in town in February or March. Maybe it's March.
February.
Yeah, February. She texted me and said she's in town and she invited me to this event. And so I was going just because it was Tia. And so I roll in, and one, I didn't know that you were executive director of Build Power. So
we still have not really announced it. Like every time we do something, I talk about it, but I'm like, we need to put this on the website, but one day.
and so you got up and you started speaking, and I was taking pictures because I was like, this is a 2023 version of Tia.
Okay.
I was like,
Tia 3.0.
hey, constantly evolving in the highest and most best way. And to see you just shine in your element, and then to think of the times when we have had conversations, because during the pandemic in I think we talked 2021 and 2022, to hear you talk about navigating being an entrepreneur and then working for an organization, and you've gone back and forth times, and you've done it with such great ease. And when we got together in February and we had tea and breakfast at what's the name? Butter Me Up. I always love to give shout outs. Butter Me Up Cafe is a Black-owned cafe. Morehouse alum created it, and it's at 14th and T if you're in DC. Those are my Ananda commercials.
Yes.
When we got together, we started talking about how the life of an entrepreneur does a lot of different things to you, and the spiritual grounding that you have has allowed you to be able to go back and forth and to get clear about what works for you, and what matters most to you now. And so I wanted to ask, did you struggle going back and forth? Because from what I see, it doesn't seem like you struggled with going from entrepreneur to working for an organization, or I like to say working with an organization.
I haven't really struggled with it. Early in my career, I struggled a lot with working at institutions because I have a lot of ideas and I always want to improve systems and processes and make things better. And sometimes that's not always welcome, especially at large entrenched institutions. And I used to really beat myself up about struggling with traditional work roles. And it took a lot of self-work and study to understand that everybody is not a creative-minded person. And, to be an entrepreneur and to be the kind of person that wants to create systems and processes. And so once I started to understand that about myself, that I am creative, that I do have an entrepreneurial spirit, I stopped struggling so much. And I could understand what worked for me and what doesn't work for me. And then my career has aligned a lot better along my strengths. So I work really well with small organizations, especially organizations that are kind of in startup mode, because not only do I have a lot of ideas, I like implementing ideas. Everybody is not like that, right? Everybody does not deal well with uncertainty and figuring things out for themselves, but I love that type of thing. And then the other reason I'll say that I probably haven't struggled as much in going back and forth is that the process of manifestation, once I make a decision and things start to align with it, I learn to accept that. So my last career break, I had set some intentions saying, okay, well, I'm working at a nonprofit organization and I want my next job to be a creative job full time. So I said that, set my intention, and then I got laid off like a month later. And so even though in my intention setting, in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm thinking like a year from now, because it was a good job and it was great. Like you're saying, we met up in 2020, got to have that fancy dinner and all that stuff. I was making good money. It was a fantastically compensated position. But there were a lot of other like really challenging things about the role I was in. Either way, when they let me go, I had to accept it like, well, I said that I wanted to work full-time creatively. And maybe that's what this is releasing me to be able to do. But I also had such a hard time, and it was in the midst of pandemic, that I also set my intention that I didn't want to look for a job right away. And I don't know how that's going to look, but I don't want to do anything right now. I want to have the opportunity to just take a break, work on some things with supporting my family through, what was going on during the pandemic and different things. And so God made a way literally out of nowhere. I got 2 fellowships, and they were both aligned around like creative work and creative endeavors. So I was able to build my network with other people who do creative work for social justice or for civic engagement. And I was able to just learn how much is out there and like what the opportunities are in the field that I'm in. And then at the end of that year, the end of 2021, is when Build Power approached me about coming to work at Build Power again. And I was able to negotiate with them right at ease of transition. And so I say all that to say that I don't struggle with taking career breaks or working for myself and then working for an organization anymore, because I've learned what works for me and what my strengths are. And ultimately, in agreeing to come on as a director at Build Power, there were a couple of things that aligned it perfectly for me. Is kind of like the timing, because I didn't have a gig, so I didn't feel conflicted about, leaving someplace to go and work at Build Power. Also because I'm a co-founder of the organization and have been familiar with it from the beginning. I'm not nervous about having like a steep learning curve around what the organization does and what the priorities are and who the players are in the field. And then when it was time for me to start looking for a job, I had to decide, okay, do I want to go through the process of finding a new job, or would I rather create this position for myself and create it in a way that works for me and is exciting? And so I decided that I would, it's the closest thing to working for myself while working with the organization. I like that, while working with the organization as possible, is to take on a leadership position with the organization that I helped to create. And even, whatever is supposed to unfold after this, I will go through the same type of process of like really checking in with myself about what do I feel like doing right now? What am I most interested in the moment? And then what are the opportunities that are going to align? And is that going to be, doing something independently? Is that going to be doing something with an organization? And so like the difference for me from at the beginning of my career was like, oh my gosh, I lost my job again. This is terrible. To now picking and choosing, and I select the career that I want to have for myself and I attract opportunities. Has been such a blessing to be able to operate like that.
A couple of things. Thank you for going as deep as I had knew you would go.
Okay, welcome.
You said what works for you. In saying that, there is this freedom.
Mm-hmm.
We all are free. We just need to be reminded of it.
Yes, I love that.
We are all free. We just have to be reminded of it. And I want to ask you, in understanding what works for you, was there a community of folks that helped you understand that you can choose what works for you? Or was there a mentor or someone that you admire from afar? I call them like, they're still my mentors. They just may never know me. But I'm seeking knowledge and advice from what they're sharing. What supported you? What affirmed you in knowing that because in essence, you're free?
I like that a lot. So the book by Louise Hay called You Create Your Life. That book, my coach Sabrina recommended it to me, and that book really helped me to understand about being free and being at choice. I also I don't mind being a rebel and being different. I grew up, like growing up, I was always kind of like teased and bullied. And instead of like teasing and bullying, kind of like making me feel bad about myself and assimilate, I just always felt like, oh my gosh, these kids are so mean and I don't know what their problem is, but I can't be worried about trying to fit in with someone else. And so honestly, I've always been surrounded by people who don't understand me and don't understand what I do. And when I would have issues on the job or things like that, people, even in my family, like, oh my gosh, why are you acting like that? Why are you acting up? Why are you being difficult? All these things. And I always have just felt like I have to stand up for myself and advocate for myself. And I have to do what feels right to me, even when it's really hard. And so coming into contact with folks who teach manifestation, with Louise Hay's work, also around like self-approval and loving yourself first, are the things that help me to, find my way. And then what is her name? There's another coach I worked with maybe right after I met you, Rosetta Thurman and Happy Black Woman, has helped me a lot, like helped me to understand that it's not, nobody is giving me a job as in giving me an opportunity, but the things that I'm bringing to any place that I'm in are valuable. And I'm allowing the employer, right, to have my skills and my services at the rate of what my salary is, but I can take my skills to the marketplace and make as much money as I would like, as much money as I believe that I can make, and like really like helped me to just unlock my imagination around what's possible. So working with her, working with Sabrina, reading Louise Hay's work, are some of the most significant teachers and teachings and programs that I was able to take a part of, to understand like, yeah, I am free, I'm grown, it's okay for me to do what I want. I actually don't have to ask for anybody's permission to do what I want to do with my life, with myself, and with my time. And I can create the life that is uh, the best for me, and I can always try again. There's no mistake that I can make that's just the end all be all for myself and for my journey. And also being willing to be different and be weird and be, I was running our Urban League Young Professionals chapter and I didn't have a job. And I was just like, I don't have a job. I definitely don't work for a corporation, but I believe in community building with Black people. And so that's why I'm the president of this organization. And it'd be okay, being the oddball in a lot of different situations.
I call it being the real you.
Mm-hmm.
Being the real you, being present well in the real you. Not always easy for us human beings to do
Yeah.
when we get caught up in human doing. And so the people that you mentioned matter a lot in my life as well. Louise Hay has been a
Mm-hmm.
big teacher in my life since the 90s. I learned about Debrina in the 90s through her sister. I met her sister in DC, and then she introduced me to her work and her book, Sacred Pampering. I think that's
Yep.
yep.
Sacred Pampering
Yeah,
Principles is the book.
that's one of the Bibles.
Yep. Yep. It is.
And it came out at a time when there weren't a whole lot of books. Now we have so many different types,
Mm-hmm.
and give thanks for that express Black women of color, women of African descent, our experiences. And then Rosetta Thurman, my brother Miko had gifted me in 2016 a conference pass, one of
Mm.
her 2-day events in DC. And right there, she had an exercise for us to do, an elevator speech to describe
Wow.
your body of work. And that's where Thriving Mindfully came from, that
I love
experience, from
that.
that, because it was like, what expresses all of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love how you've been able to take the lessons, the wisdom, the teachings, and integrate them into your life. And I know that that's a lifelong process. We're always growing, we're always changing, and putting some things away and taking some stuff out, and just making the modifications in who we are along the way. I
Yeah.
really, really admire how you do that. Even in the midst of mess, even in the midst of, hard moments, in being really transparent, with your process. If you don't dress it up. You definitely have said, no, I'm struggling.
I'm struggling because
And
sometimes we're struggling.
yeah. And also being able to hold the joy too. You've been able to, like, I've heard you describe, in one moment struggle, in another moment joy, and just be able to have an open heart to experience all of the buffet of emotions and experiences that life has. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that we talked about was the pressure, and I may be rephrasing it in a different way, the pressure that we put on ourselves, especially as Black women, people of color, to pick either be an entrepreneur or be an employee, be an entrepreneur, be an employee. And the responses we get from others when you may be working with an organization and having your own business, and how people may look at you a certain way, or side eye, or just whatever it is. You don't
Mm-hmm.
strike me as somebody who gives a about what folks think, and I, on most days, I don't give a fuck. But I have my moments, I have
Yeah,
my
yeah, me too.
moments. I have my moments, and some things can get to you. How how would you tell someone that is, um, maybe straddling? I don't even want to say straddling, because I think of it as an equation. What works best for you? What you said, what works best for you? How would you tell them, boo, do you? Like, what would you
Mm-hmm,
say to
mm-hmm.
them?
Yeah, I think that that's such a great question. And I think like the theme and your focus and like, the name of your business is Thriving Mindfully. I feel like there, the idea that there's binaries is a really, Eurocentric capitalist perspective on life. And especially when it comes to, work and working and workers, and like controlling how you make your money is like, it's just a false scarcity. And that's not to say that, because I'm, I supervise people, I manage people, and especially like creative people, they sometimes have jobs on the side, or they have gigs, or they have opportunities that come up because of the amazing creative work that they're doing. It's not to say that you don't have to honor your commitments to organizations, because you do need to honor your commitments, and we should be able to provide uh, the skills and the services and the capacities to the organizations and institutions that we're committed to, that are necessary. But that doesn't mean that you can't also thrive in other areas of your life or other areas of your career, or that you should be, I don't feel like I should be limited from, for example, having a speaking engagement or facilitating a meeting for someone through my consulting business because I have a full-time job. I also decided during my last career break, was like, I'm actually never giving anybody quote unquote full-time ever again. I don't know how much money somebody would have to pay me to say, hey, I'm going to give 40 hours a week indefinitely to this institution. It doesn't make any sense, actually, for me to live a balanced, healthy, sustainable life, for me to give that much time indefinitely in exchange for a salary or in exchange for a paycheck. Like sometimes I need a break. Sometimes I have 3 hours and not 8 hours. Sometimes I have 12-hour days, right? Because that's what it's taking. And so like, I'm not afraid to, and I don't think, every institution is different. People have to navigate it for themselves, but I don't think it's unreasonable to say, hey, you can explore other areas of work or creativity, or opportunities, and still be a good employee and still be a good worker. And there are also, people who work in industries that don't give them the flexibility to do that. And that is a choice, you choose whether or not to work in those industries. Because as far as capitalism is concerned, you owe your loyalty to your employer. And especially the way we have it set up where, your health benefits are through this and your life insurance is through this, like all of these things tied to your employer, when really your employer is able to get what they take from you. They make millions and billions of dollars off of, but then they tell you you can't have a side hustle. That doesn't make sense. That this doesn't add up. And I'm grateful for the opportunities that I have had, to grow and explore, how to have balance with taking advantage of other opportunities. I also am a co-worker owner in a cooperative for Black creatives called Zeal. Shout out to Zeal. And there has to be opportunities for us to thrive in multiple ways, and not have such a scarcity mentality about our time and our gifts and our talents.
Thank you for mentioning the scarcity and the capitalism and in all of what you said. My hope is that somebody somewhere is listening when this is dropped, maybe a year later, 2 years, whenever, and they get that spark of, I can do that too.
Yeah.
Because some of us need to hear and see others before we allow ourselves that space, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole thing, like in our conversation, is it's okay. It's not even okay, it's fucking necessary.
It's
For
necessary.
you to define who you are and
Yes.
who you want to be from moment to moment, day to day, and what you want to do. And yes, we know people have responsibilities. Within all of that, you still have the birthright of your freedom.
Yes.
And that's really what we're talking about here, is stepping into all of these birthrights of self-care, of mindfulness, of freedom, of self-love. You name it, you put it out there, you have birthrights. You can go from now until the next millennium with the birthrights. We have to start doing that, and we have to continue to talk about it, because it may seem like people know, but when I talk to clients and I see folks, it's still something that needs to be reiterated, and stories need to be told of real people that are actually, struggling with it, living it, getting up, getting down, learning, growing, changing, with that intention to be free, with that intention to be present well in their real selves, to live with this thing called thriving mindfully. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you, what does thriving mindfully mean to you when you hear it?
When I first heard it, the concept made me smile, because I feel like so much of, especially like, systemic oppression has puts us into survival mode and wants us to stay in survival mode. But there's always uh, I'll share like the picture, the picture I have on my altar of my great grandmother. She has on like a mink stole and a hat and some glasses. And I look at and she has like this like little like a spark in her eye. And I think about like the time that she lived in, like survived the Tulsa Race Massacre with my grandma as like a little baby. And living under Jim Crow segregation, like all of these things. And then here's this picture of her just looking fly as hell. You know what I mean? I feel like the concept of thriving mindfully is like a reminder that we have the right to not just to survive, but to thrive and to live with joy and to live with power, and that is within us, no matter what the outward circumstances are, and no matter what the outward circumstances how they try to constrain us. They might restrain us, but they cannot take that thriving and the will to thrive away from us, and living with more joy, living with more passion, living with more freedom, getting out of the mentality that it's something I have to wait for, is what it means for me. And then, being mindful, right, about balance, about, yes, there's so much about we talk about this a little bit, Ananda, and a lot of kind of like wellness and in mindfulness, at least in content creator land, there's a way that people talk about self-care and manifestation and living as though that they don't have any responsibility to their fellow human being. And they don't have any responsibility to be tuned in to what's going on politically and all of these things. And so for me, the mindful part is like I am in relationship to other people, be it my family, be it my community, be it myself, that I do have a responsibility to be mindful. I have a responsibility to be aware. I have a responsibility to make choices that are for the greater good. And again, not to the point of overextending and self-sacrificing certain things, but definitely not in a self-centered and disregarding of others type of way, but in a way that is balanced, and in a way that is going to encourage the thriving of others, is what it means to me.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Because I can't be, if I'm thriving alone, am I thriving?
That right
No.
there. That right there. No, seriously, that right there. I mean, we, us.
Us and we.
Us and we. And the first priority is to yourself, because you can be of no service, no good to no one if you don't take care of yourself. But after that, the us, the community, the family. And it doesn't mean that we have to be the mules of the earth. Like Mama Zora, our ancestor, talked about Black women. We're not advocating that. We're advocating that you find within yourself, because everybody's life and alignment and intention looks differently. And what I hope we start to do is to give each other the grace and the space to define it the way that we want.
Yeah.
And the way that it works for us at a given point in time. What worked at 20 for me didn't work at 30, didn't work at 40, and it damn sure doesn't work at 58. It's some differences.
It's different.
You did. Yeah, you did. It's some differences. And some of the stuff works and some of it doesn't. It's it's giving ourselves and each other that grace and space to define ourselves for ourselves. Just like our ancestor, Mama Audrey, said, if you could write a letter to your younger self, what wisdom would you share?
So this question makes me emotional because I have also like a lot of young kids in my family, and I try to pour, the wisdom that I have into them. And so the letter to my younger self and what I would share with her is that you are, it's so funny, you're prettier than you think you are, you're more blessed than you know, and there are no limits to what it is that you can do or achieve or accomplish, even with the limits that are being placed on you right now. There really aren't any limits. Those are all temporary. And that like my wildest hopes and dreams and goals are 100% possible for me. And that's why I have them. And to go for it. Yeah, that's what I would share with her.
I love it. I love that question because it changes for me on a regular basis. Like, what would I share? Uh, it's important for us to go back and talk to our younger selves, to the people that we were and who we are now, and to connect. That's a part of being well, and there's so many different ways to do it. I love that you have a regular journaling practice and that you incorporate the cosmos. I love that. I'm gonna start using that in my own practice. The
Yeah, the
cosmos. You're the
cosmos.
second person in the last week that has said the cosmos to me. And I was like, oh, this is a new word for me. So
Yeah.
is there anything that you want to share that we didn't get to in our conversation with the listening audience?
So the thing that we didn't necessarily talk about, but around like a daily practice that I have also started is keeping a well-being journal. And I started it a couple years ago. First, when I started tracking my menstrual cycle, but I was like, actually, I should be tracking everything. Like, how do I feel every day? And then like what's contributing to that, or if there's an area of concern. And so when I'm feeling like especially good, I journal that. I don't wait until I have an ailment either anymore. It's like, no, if I woke up feeling really good, let me write that down. If I woke up feeling really tired and run down, let me write that down. Oh, something's going on with my right ankle. Let me write that down. Like tracking my health and well-being to look for patterns, for like also for self-validation, like, hey, you've been doing really good, and it's paying off. Or if I need to notice something like, oh, I haven't had as much or as good a sleep as I need to, or water, things like that. That journaling practice has helped me a lot. To also to notice when I am doing well over time, because when I'm in times when I've had health challenges, it can feel so overwhelming and like really discouraging. And so when my body is feeling good and feeling better, I also want to note that. And I want to acknowledge that for myself also, and not be only focused on when something is going wrong.
I love the well-being journal. That's a beautiful, beautiful practice. Last year I did love notes to myself where I just wrote,
Mm,
hey love, and just different things, anything that came up. I did it most days. I had some days where I skipped because I'm human. This year I decided to do soft notes, which
okay.
I think I'm gonna add the body piece because I do this practice where I write just a soft note to myself, and I call myself my BFF, and then I use a lot of B words like beautiful, brave,
Mm,
bold, brilliant, and then I use the F words, fabulous, fantastic, financially abundant, and I go on and on.
mhm,
So I'm training myself as I move into 58 even deeper to rewire some of the thoughts. I
mhm.
like the well-being piece to add about my body because I say I love my different parts of my body in the mornings when I'm at the gym and when I'm walking,
Nice.
and I love the cells and just appreciating it because the body has done some different things since I took up tennis last year. I learned about the piriformis muscle. I didn't even know it existed.
I don't know what that is.
That hey, when it happens, it's like in your buttocks area, and it can be,
Oh,
if you strain it, it can be an opportunity. And I pride myself on being, I'm out here doing
yeah,
my
yeah.
thing.
Do
It's
your
like,
thing, do your thing.
but it made me surrender. I was at the chiropractor. I was like, "Ooh, I didn't even know I needed to go to the chiropractor," but thank God I started going.
Oh, I
Um,
love the chiropractor.
yeah, it's really important.
Mhm.
This this tuning into your body and your practice, your well-being. I love that. Everybody, Tia Osho, did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, just like Osho, one of my favorites. Tia Osho is the executive director of Build Power. She's a spirit woman, and she is my soul sister love. She's a member of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, Delta
That's
Sigma Theta
right.
Sorority Incorporated. Let me get that right. I don't need nobody
Incorporated.
coming for me, including my sorors, the Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, that may watch this and say, woo. I love that you are and you're committed to your community in so many different ways, and you show up. You have 3 bracelets on your wrist.
I do.
I wanted you to just share what are they about and what do they do for you? Because you know I'm crystalled up.
I see you crystalled up. You crystalled up gold. So I have a tiger's eye, I have a jade, and then I have another one. I just really like this one, but I don't know what crystals it is. This middle one. It looks like it could be some tiger's eye, but it also has like a bunch of different colors, so it might be a mix. And so I've always been into, even before I learned more about crystals, I've always been into like natural element jewelry. So jewelry made from shells and wood and glass, all those good things. And so like crystal jewelry helps me stay grounded. It's naturally beautiful. I feel like I'm naturally beautiful.
Yes, you are.
And then the different elements around like chakra alignment are like areas of healing. I just let them pick me every day. Like, okay, which ones am I wearing? And sometimes it's an armful, and sometimes today it's just 3.
I love it. I love that. I love it. Yeah, I had to give a shout out to the crystals. Yeah. And you also have a Ghanaian Adinkra symbol.
Yes, these are my Sankofa heart earrings. Yes. They're made out of wood, and I got them in Ghana, even though they might be made in China, who knows? But I love like the Sankofa heart. This is actually my favorite Adinkra symbol.
Yeah, you took a trip to Ghana. Was it last year or the year before?
I went last year. I went both. So when I lost my job in 2021, I said, I'm going, whatever happens, I'm going to Ghana, because I had never been before. So I finally went, and then I went again. I went to Tanzania for New Year's last year, and I stopped in Ghana on the way. Because I said, East Africa to West Africa, it's like going from, cross country. So let me stop there. And that was a great trip because I got to hang out with my line sister. Her dad is Ghanaian, and she happened to be in town. And so I got to experience the city of Accra with her, which is really awesome. And then I'm going back to Ghana again for a friend of mine. She is getting married, so I get to experience my first Ghanaian wedding. So at this point, going to Ghana is like going to Atlanta for me. It's like I'm just going to I gotta make a visit. I gotta make a visit a couple times a year.
All right, I love it. I love how you have incorporated travel into your well-being and regular travel. It's always a good thing to do.
Yeah, I need it. I have to travel. I have to, not just because I live in Arizona. I might feel differently if I live somewhere else, but I have to get away. Even if it's just for a little bit, even if it's just for a couple of days, I have to take breaks and go and explore and be in a different space, different energy, around different people, different cultures. I need that in my life.
All right. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up, everybody. Tia, where can people find you and Build Power? What's the best way for them to find you online?
So because, we don't know what's going to happen with good old Twitter, I have a website, TIAOSO.net, and there's a contact form on my website. And I'm also on Instagram at tia.oso. And yeah, and Build Power is at bldpwr.com.
All right. Thank you so much, my soul sister love, for being with me, taking time out of your day. And this won't be the last time that we have a conversation. We'll be back. We'll be bringing Tia back at some point to share on whatever we feel like we need to talk about, because that's how we do. Everybody, I want you to tune in to the Ananda commercials that are coming up with some offerings that you may want to take advantage of if you feel called to. So just tune in. And as always, I'll see you next time. Did you know that mindful self-care is your birthright and your superpower for being the real you and serving others in your life, relationships, and career? You get 1,440 minutes each day. You are worth 45 minutes of mindful self-care twice a month. That's right. I want you to commit to 45 minutes of mindful self-care twice a month with my support during the Thriving Mindfully Academy's mindful self-care classes that are offered on the 2nd and the 4th Mondays of each month. Join me on September 11th, 25th, October 9th, 23rd, November 13th, and 27th, and the last class is December 11th from 8 to 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time via Zoom. Go to AnandaLeeke.com/movement to get your ticket. Register now, and I'll see you in the monthly Thriving Mindfully Academy's Mindful Self-Care class. See you then. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to the Thriving Mindfully podcast. If you're ready to be inspired and empowered with my coaching support, join me in the Thriving Mindfully Academy. Visit AnandaLeeke.com/academy. Now, if you're ready to dive deeper and move past your comfort zone with my one-on-one coaching program, book a discovery call with me today. Visit AnandaLeeke.com. If you need something juicy to read, check out my 3 mindfulness books: Love's Troubadours, a self-love and yoga-inspired novel; That Which Awakens Me, a mindful creativity memoir; and Digital Sisterhood, a mindful technology memoir. Go to AnandaLeeke.com/books. All of my books are available on Amazon.com. Well, that about wraps us up. And as I always like to say, may we all continue to embrace thriving mindfully in everything that we think, feel, say, and do. See you next time.